There were the rivalries between the Nazi hunters were sort of legendary. Can you talk a little bit about that and why they were created and how it helped or hurt the cause?
Well, I think, first of all, by their nature, the Nazi hunters, there are two types. One were the prosecutors, investigators associated with governments, and that starts, say, in Nuremberg. One of the people I interviewed, still alive, 96 years old, is Ben Ferenc, this amazing prosecutor, grew up in Hell's Kitchen from a Hungarian Jewish family, and got a Harvard Law School with full scholarship, ends up at age 27 in Nuremberg as this junior prosecutor. And he ends up trying what's called the Einsatzgruppen case, the special killing squads in the East, and huge, mass murders on a huge scale. And these were people all who felt that what they did, each one of them, they were determined. They had chutzpah, whether they were Jewish or not, the Klarsfeld or not. They are the people who actually slaps the West German chancellor who has a Nazi past. But they also had different ideas about what were the right tactics, how far you go. For instance, Wiesenthal hated the theatrical tactics of the Klarsfelds, for instance, who would try to actually have at least a fake kidnapping of an SS officer in Germany
for the films,
or to scare them and to make the point that justice is not being done. And they had rivalries. The biggest rivalries was who was responsible for the capture of Eichmann, because everybody was interested in getting Eichmann. He was the big fish. And because the Mossad could not talk about where it got its information, the big tip came from this man, Fritz Bauer, who's a fascinating person who's just been rediscovered in Germany and is now the subject of some movies and so forth. But when I started the book, was barely known because he got a tip from a blind Jewish German refugee in Argentina, whose daughter had been dating Klaus Eichmann, who hadn't changed his name, the son. Eichmann had changed his name to Ricardo Clement. But Eichmann's son, Nicholas Eichmann, Nicholas Eichmann, he hadn't changed his last name. The amount of, the sense of, they felt they'd gotten away with it.
Right.
And Beate Klarsfeld at one point said something to the effect of, you really don't, in most cases, you don't have to go hunting for Nazi war criminals in the Amazon or someplace like that. You have to look them up in the Cologne phone book. And that's what she did. She found some of the worst SS officers who had deported people from France by calling information.
Or in my experience in a suburb next to mine in Cleveland, Ohio, when I was growing up.
Oh yes. Cleveland had a very famous one, and that's a long case. John Dumjanuk, with the longest court case in history. And also one of the big differences was the German courts, and even Ben Ferenc in his trial in Nuremberg, as opposed to someone else, William Denson, a young lawyer who handled the Dachau trials, had different concepts of what constituted guilt. Classically, the German courts, and some of the US cases, said, you have to prove that so-and-so was killed these people, and there were witnesses and documents, or tortured these people, and specific acts. While there were others, like William Denson, this Alabama lawyer who handled Dachau cases, then Fritz Bauer, the German lawyer, who said, no, if you were a guard, for instance, in Auschwitz or Sobibor, one of these camps that was primarily a killing camp, you are guilty by your function. It's like somebody, if there's a gang out there that's going around killing every family that has blue eyes, you don't care who's the shooter, who's standing guard, who's the driver. They're all guilty, and that's what. And German courts refused to accept that. So in effect, there was so many until the Demjanjuk case where this turned around. And that's why it was so hard to prosecute people. First of all, as one of the attorneys for Simon Wiesenthal Center told me, most survivors are not able, unless there was someone really well known like Mengele, identify exactly which guards did what. You were not looking people in the eyes. The people who could destroy you in a second, you were looking down on that ground in front of you. So it set a whole different standard.